Okay, so ignore the fact that it's been a couple of weeks and I promised that the other video would be out in a few days. Stuff happened. I didn't have a whole lot of time for video recording, but now I do. Now today you're going to get two videos from me. Y'all will figure out what the second one's going to be later, but for now, this is the first one y'all have to deal with. So, you remember how I said in the last video that the last video was just for context? That's because that previous theory about the MCI happening pre-1983, or at the very least pre-Fnaf 4 minigames, how I said that was context, yeah, because you're going to at the very least need to suspend your disbelief for a minute to understand how this is going to work. So you've heard of Fnaf theories. Now get ready for Fnaf conspiracy theories. Because this one is a bit out there, I'm going to go ahead and admit that right out of the gate here. So, this little theory of mine, I have lovingly named the 83 conspiracy. Because it all revolves around the year 1983. And listen, there isn't going to be a TLDR for this theory this time. This theory is that wild that I don't want to spoil it for you. I want you to experience this as we go along, okay? So, let me just go ahead and get this out of the way. I just want y'all to hear me out. I know this theory is going to sound crazy, and I'm not even going to claim that this theory is correct. It would change what we thought we knew about a major event in the lore, and it at least partially hinges on the theory that by the time the Fnaf 4 minigames are happening, Charlie and the MCI kids are already dead. All I'm asking of y'all is to hear me out on this. I know it's going to sound wild. Just hear me out. Listen, I'm not going to even this isn't like a previous theory situation where it's basically an agree to disagree on some parts of the theory. No. If any of y'all actually agree with this, I'm going to be shocked, honestly, because I don't even think this is correct, and I'm the person who came up with this theory. I'm very well aware how wild this all sounds, but I'm gonna need y'all to just hear me out, hang in there with me, give me your thoughts on it in the comments later, but hear this entire theory out, listen to the evidence, and all that. This entire theory basically just exists because my brain kept connecting some dots that probably weren't meant to be connected, but they did anyway. So that's why this theory is going to exist. Okay, so we've got all that out of the way? Good. Okay, moving on. The previous theory, important for this one, is the video literally right before this one, my MCI theory. Watch the previous video for the full context, and to keep in mind that for the sake of time and simplicity, I refer to the crying child as Cassidy, and the Fredbear MCI kid as Andrew. Now, someone else mentioned this in the comments of my last video that I had mentioned that I don't view the books. I don't like using those for theories. That's a long explanation, and this is not the video for that. Maybe I'll make one later as to why I don't use that, and it'll be a longer version of my explanations I'd given previously. But, the reason I refer to the Fredbear MCI kid as Andrew, despite not using the books for a lot of stuff, is because I already refer to the crying child as Cassidy, and thus I need another name that people believe that whoever the Fredbear MCI kid was, or at least the Vengeful spirit who is believed to have been in Fredbear / Golden Freddy, is, the Vengeful spirit in Ultimate Custom Night. Some people think it's Andrew, some people think it's, the Fredbear MCI kid Cassidy, not the crying child who's Cassidy, who I call Cassidy. So just for the sake of this, I call that kid Andrew so that it doesn't feel like I pulled a name out of nowhere. I don't believe that Andrew is the name of the Fredbear MCI kid. I just use that name because it's one that people would, probably associate with the Vengeful spirit / potential name for the Fredbear MCI kid, and since I already call the crying child Cassidy. Have we got all that down? So don't do that, so don't make a comment about that, because I'm explaining my reasoning here. I already refer to the crying child as Cassidy, and while I don't use the books for theorizing, I do believe that maybe some parts of the books could be canon. I just don't use a lot of it because I have not read the Fazbear Frights or Tales from the Pizzaplex books because I don't have time for that, honestly. So I just use the name Andrew because it's probably like one of the names people would associate with the Vengeful Spirit, or one of the potential names for the Vengeful Spirit, or who it could be. So we've got that. It's just the names I use to refer to them, so they don't have to constantly call him Crying Child or the Fredbear MCI Kid. So we've got that. Okay, good. So here's the TLDR of the previous theory. These are the main points you need to know for this theory to make sense. The MCI and Charlie's murder happened prior to 1983, maybe a year or two before. The latest I will allow this to happen for this theory to work is basically just before the Fnaf 4 minigames. I'm also willing to accept that they could have taken place earlier in the year. Cassidy witnessed the murder of Andrew, who was spring-locked, and that's what he saw. The thing that he misunderstood was who exactly did the murdering. As I explained in my previous theory, he basically thought that his dad, dressed as Spring Bonnie, was just Spring Bonnie doing the murder. He probably didn't know at the time, at least, that it was his dad. So we've got that good. And then, of course, Andrew possessed the Fredbear plush in order to keep an eye on Cassidy, considering that they were likely friends, considering that Cassidy refers to the other plushies as his friends, and if we take the final minigame cutscene into account, then the other plushie seeming to represent his friends could mean he was close with all the MCI kids and potentially Charlie, with Charlie being close to him making sense because their dads knew each other. So there's all that. So yeah, basically Andrew just possessed the Fredbear plush to keep an eye on his friend. So we've got all that down, right? We've got that good. So, with all that out of the way, let's enter Chapter 1, the beginning, the place this all got started. So, the way this entire theory got started was because one night a few weeks ago while I was trying to sleep, I tried to think about how Midnight Motorist would work with my interpretation of the timeline. You know, the whole MCI and Charlie's death taking place prior to the Fnaf 4 minigames at the very least. I like to at least give it a year or two before. And so as I'm sitting there, I thought of something that I don't see a lot of people mention. And that whole theory then kind of spiraled into me thinking about other things that connect, and then it spiraled into this entire conspiracy theory I've created. Now, what did I discover? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's continue on with the presentation here. Let's go ahead and start with Midnight Motorist. So everyone agrees that the little mound of dirt here is a grave, but the question has always been, for whom? Some people think it might be Elizabeth. However, some people would also disagree with this because this would mean that Elizabeth's death to Circus Baby would have happened much earlier in the timeline than a lot of people would think would make sense, because why would William be building death robots at this point? However, I pointed out in the last video that we technically don't have a concrete motive for Afton, so for all we know, he's just always been like that, and he only really discovered Remnant after, you know, killing a bunch of kids at Freddy's. But we're not going to get into that right now. So, some people think this could be Elizabeth, it could be the Crying Child, I've even seen a few ones saying it could be Mrs. Afton. However, I would like to offer another explanation. There's not a person buried there. It's a dog. Specifically Susie's dog. Now let me go ahead and explain why this sort of came to me in the middle of the night. So for one thing, we already know that William drinks a lot. A lot of people agree that Junior's is a bar that William goes to, and he got too drunk on the night that Midnight Motorist happened. He is told, come on, you know, you can't be here, don't make this more difficult than it has to be. And so maybe he drank a bit too much and now he's not allowed back in there. Maybe he caused problems while he was drunk. We don't really know. But if William was drinking here earlier that night and then got into his car, this would mean that William drunk drives. Now, I know I say that I don't use, like, evidence from the books too often, It is kind of confirmed both in the minigame if you listen closely to the sounds that happens at the end of the third go-around of Susie's minigame, Fruity Maze, that you hear what sounds like a car alarm going off. And in the books, though I don't really use the books, but this kind of connects, so I'm willing to make an exception for this one thing. Susie mentions in the Silver Eye novels that her dog got hit by a car. So, and then of course, then my brain came up with the question that nobody really seems to ask when theorizing, which is how did William know about Susie's dog? Well, in my eyes, there's one simple answer. It's because he's the one who hit her dog. He's the one who hit her dog with his car while drunk driving, and then buried the dog in the woods to, keep them from finding the dog that he, hit while drunk driving. I think her parents kind of already knew, because I think in the books she says that one of her parents told her that her dog got hit, and maybe she witnessed her dog getting hit or something, but, there's that. So that's how William knew, because he's the guy who hit the dog. So basically the long story short is that this mound is a red herring. It's not a person buried under there, Susie's dog is. So we've got all that down. Now the next question I asked is, who is who in the minigame? A couple of them were pretty easy for me to answer. Yellow guy, mustard man, whatever you want to call him, is William. This is generally widely agreed that this is the guy, and I think that, 5 Laps at Freddy's, the new racing game that's going to come out at some point, who knows when, kind of confirms that this was William. The person on the chair is Michael. They have gray text. Michael is the only other character we know of who's had gray text in the games before, and, shirt colors kind of match up. The footprints outside are Golden Freddy, but specifically the vengeful spirit Andrew down here. So that means the runaway is the crying child. However, I don't think it's the crying child pre-Bite of 83. It's post-Bite of 83. Let me explain this one real quick. The pill bottles. I don't see anyone mentioning the fact that there are pill bottles here. I think maybe it could be painkillers. I mean, you'd probably have, a lot of pain in your head if you get bitten by, an animatronic bear. Let's be real here. So, here's the thing that's always bothered me with the pill bottles. If Cassidy died shortly after the bite, maybe anywhere from a few hours to a couple of days before, why would he have pills? Who would have, enough time to, prescribe this kid some pills when, he is dying and they're not even sure he's gonna, make it? You guys get what I mean with this, right? I don't see people mentioning the fact that, the kid, and these aren't, this is a pill bottle, of, prescription pills. These were things that the kid would have been prescribed. If it's generally believed that the crying child died pretty soon after the bite happened, then why would they have had time to prescribe him painkillers if they weren't even sure the kid was going to make it? To me, this could show that Cassidy was recovering from the bite, and that it didn't kill him, at least not as soon as we thought it did. So we've got all that down, right? So then that begs the question of, if this is Cassidy, the crying child, then what does William mean by that place? Ran off to that place again, he will be sorry when he gets back. What is that place? It couldn't be one of the pizzerias. The kid doesn't like to go there, and just why go out there immediately after the bite? And also, you know what I mean? But then I thought of something. I think Rytos mentioned this in a theory of ignore any computer sounds you might hear. That Rytos mentioned that this lake over here, the one in the Old Man Consequences minigame from FNAF World and Ultimate Custom Night, could be nearby the Afton house. Could be the one near the Afton house. There's a reason why I point this out now. You guys will get it later. We also know from Fallfest 83 that if this is the Afton house, then that means there was a lake nearby the Afton house. We even kind of see a car, likely William's car, near the Fallfest 83 event. So why am I saying that that place would be a lake nearby the house? Why would Cassidy want to go near a lake? What business would he have near the lake? Well, I have a potential answer for that. So, do you guys remember how in the last video I mentioned how the body couldn't have been hidden in the springlock, how Andrew's body couldn't have been hidden in the springlock suit? Because they were still in use, and thus I mentioned that William had moved the body somewhere else, dumped it somewhere else. Well, I have an idea as to where exactly he put Andrew's body. We know that the little red Freddy, the golden Freddy, and Ultimate Custom Night is likely representing the Vengeful Spirit / Andrew. Like, this is widely agreed upon. But something I found interesting is that the only way you can leave this area is by drowning yourself in the lake. So, what I'm saying is that I believe that the reason this lake seems important to the Vengeful Spirit and why Old Man Consequences tries to get Andrew to rest while sitting next to a lake is because William dumped Andrew's body in the lake nearby his house. He'd know where it is, and if anyone started getting suspicious of that area, he could just easily go over there and move it. He dumped his body in the lake because he couldn't hide him in the springlock suits. So yeah, in conclusion, body in there. There's even a reddish glow here. Not really evidence, but interesting coincidence there, I'd say. So, putting the pieces together for Chapter 1, the Midnight Motorist runaway is Cassidy, aka the Crying Child. He's being led by Andrew, who is posing as a ghostly Fredbear or Golden Freddy, to find his body, which was dumped in a lake near the Afton house. The body was in the lake due to the springlock suit still being in use by the time of the murders, thus meaning William couldn't hide it in there like he did the other bodies. William knew where Cassidy was going, likely because he's done this before, and why he was going there, which was to find Andrew's body. William is not happy about this. The grave in the woods is a red herring, meant to confuse us. A person's body is not buried there. Susie's dog is. This is a sub-theory that I kind of mentioned earlier. William hit Susie's dog while drunk driving and buried it in the woods. That's why William knows about her dog. He's the reason it's dead. Now with this theory, this does raise the question of why this section of the minigame is called Later That Night. I think it could just, because I've heard this explanation used in theories before, it could just be that William was just off drinking, driving around, maybe trying to calm himself down or something, tried to go back to the bar. It's just later that night while he was drinking. That's the explanation we're going to use for now, unless he committed another murder. I think that we could then use the 5 laps at Freddy's thing, where it mentions how the Midnight Motorist car is a killer ride, to just again point to the fact that William's a murderer, it's his car. So we've got all that. We then get to Chapter 2, Festival Fires and Unexpected Revelations. So, let's talk about the oddity that is Fallfest 83 and its fire. Fallfest 83 and the Bite of 83 took place the same year, just at different times. The Bite of 83 likely took place in the spring or summer, most likely summer, because kids are playing around outside and we never hear or see Cassidy or anyone else in school. I think summer break is the most likely option here because how green it is outside, the flowers, the kids just going around, running around, having fun. And then, of course, Fallfest 83 likely took place during Halloween or at the very least sometime in October, because it seemed to be a Halloween-ish based festival. There are 2 notable locations, at least for the Bonnie Bully / Cassie's dad, which are the Carousel and Fazerblast. The Carousel levels seem to be the oddest, because those are the levels where we hear Moon ask Bonnie Bully, "What makes you so special?" Specifically those levels. We see a fire in Fazerblast too, but it's not for too long. It's we just sort of see it happening, the beginning of it, and then the aftermath. We'll get to that point later, but in the Carousel, that's where Bonnie Bully is just asked the question, where we also see a fire. So why during the carousel is he asked that? So, because the thing is that, like, Fallfest is suddenly being brought up again. It's specific, in a very particular event at Fallfest. It seems to be being brought up in Help Wanted 2, where we're learning about Bonnie Bully a bit more, Cassie's dad. It's like, it seems that something happened there, and for some reason it's important to him. And the fact that, as it's been kind of pointed out before, this seems to have taken place during the 1983 Fall Fest seems to be important. Why is Fall Fest 83 important? That's the question. Then I started to think more. There's a connection between 1983 and specifically Halloween. For one thing, Fnaf 4 takes place either in 1983, if you believe that the nightmares are just something that the crying child originally came up with, and then somehow Michael started having them. Or at the very least, Fnaf 4 is connected to the year due to the minigames. One of those two things is what's happening here, is what I'm saying. We've got the Halloween DLC with the Jacko Bonnie, Jacko Chica, and with Nightmare Mangle and all that. And what's interesting is that Nightmarion seems to have become a canon character from the DLC, despite everyone else not really being canon. Like, see Security Breach and Ruin. We specifically see stuff that connects back to Nightmarion and not Puppet specifically. Meaning that something about all that is just canon now. We then have the original Help Wanted Halloween DLC taking place in Fallfest 1983. It takes place near the Afton House and a lake. We've already mentioned why the lake is important. There seemed to have been a party in a barn, notably with what seems to be a birthday cake. Stick a pin in this for now. This is going to be important in a minute. Help Wanted 2 specifically references Fallfest 83 in a couple of minigames, specifically a fire that took place, or fires, multiple. So then we get to the line, "What makes you so special?" said specifically to Bonnie Bully. There are two animatronics who I think are of note here. Mystic Hippo, she's just sort of like our guide through the weirdness of this game. Her saying it, probably not anything too important to think of with that. But the other two animatronics who say it are, and I think that there's actually a reason why these two are the ones who say it, and why it's important that they say it. We have Moon, who is a terrifying animatronic associated with sleep, like the nightmares, and he specifically says this line on the carousel levels. The other animatronic who says it is Circus Baby, an animatronic based on and possessed by Cassidy's sister. Whether you think Elizabeth is older or younger, that's why I didn't specify. I just said she's his sister. I think that's interesting that the animatronic connected to his sister, and one who, basically by general vibes, seems to be connected to the nightmares, something also associated with the crying child, is important. These are two animatronics that, in some way, shape, or form, seem to be connected to Cassidy. And they're the ones who say it to Bonnie Bully. What makes you so special? So, then I remembered a question from the security logbook. One that then started the conspiracy theory part of this theory. One that I haven't seen a lot of people bring up since Fallfest 83 and the carousel were mentioned. The other spirit in the logbook, whoever you believe it to be, asked Crying Child this: "Was your favorite ride the carousel?" And then something clicked in my mind. Some of y'all might be able to see where I'm going with this already, but patience. 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 We're gonna get there in a minute. It's an earth-shattering question if you think about it with all these connections I've made. Was your favorite ride the carousel? So putting the pieces together, here's what we have for Chapter 2. Fallfest 83 had a fire, a seemingly infamous one, at least one important to Bonnie Bully. For some unknown reason, this is an important memory to him. There are two important fires that he seems to remember, one happening at Fazerblast and the other at the carousel. The carousel especially seems to be like a very core memory for him, given the fact that Moon says the line here, "What makes you so special?" There's some kind of party that seemed to be happening in the barn. A birthday party even, with a cake there. This is important. Remember this for just a minute. And that Cassidy seems to like carousels. Perhaps it was the Fallfest one, not like the Fnaf 2 carousel that we seem to think it was. So then my brain clicked the pieces together into place. Chapter 3, The Night the Carousel Burned Down. This is going to be the controversial bit of the theory, and y'all are going to figure out why very quickly. So, the carousel fire seems to have a secret, one that you don't really find out about unless you, do some, file manipulating and stuff, if you go out of the bounds of the game. There are two different screenshots here, one from Horoscope's video, and another one from Raito's video, this secret solves the next FNAF game. There's a trail of fire leading to the carousel, and the trail seems very direct. But there's also a major fire happening in the barn, where the fire trail seems to start, leading to the carousel. So that then begs the question, was the carousel fire, and by extension the barn fire, an accident? Or was it potentially arson? And here's something else that then seemed to tie this all together for me. There's a birthday party, it seems, going on in the barn, with a little cake over here, where I got from the same Raito's video. And if you look to the right, there's a birthday cake. There's candles on it. That seems to show it was a birthday cake. This is the Curse of Dreadbear DLC prize room. The regular one is to the left. This is what you'd usually see. And the It's Me Easter egg to the right. It's Me is typically associated with Golden Freddy and, occasionally, by extension, Cassidy the Crying Child. So, was this just a regular birthday party for someone attending? Or was it potentially a do-over for Cassidy? Now, I have a question, a controversial question, if you will. And before any of y'all start yelling at me in the comments, I want you to seriously, deeply think about this question. This question would change everything we thought we knew about the FNAF timeline. Probably about William, not really William himself, but I want y'all to think about this long and hard for a second. My question to you is, I want you to tell me, are we really 100%, without a shadow of a doubt, absolutely certain that the bite or complications relating to it is what killed Cassidy, the Crying Child? Are we sure that that's what did it? I mean, we're just sort of shown the bite and then shown the Crying Child dying in the hospital. Are we sure these two events are connected? So I think you guys get what I'm implying here. So while you're thinking about that question, I'm going to continue on talking about the differences between the two important fires to Bonnie Bully, the two Fallfest 83 fires that seem to be so important to him, the Fazerblast fire and the carousel fire. What's the differences between the two of them? For Fazerblast, the fire starts at the end of one of the games, when you're trying to go through the path to get all of the little poppets or dolls that connect to the MCI and Charlie. At the end of one of these games, a small fire seems to start at the end of one of the games. We see a few seconds of it. And then we start the next game in the aftermath of the fire. Things aren't still burning to my memory. This fire specifically seems to be very accidental. An animatronic starts sparking, sets a small pumpkin on fire, and then the pumpkin either rolls off, gets launched, I can't remember, and then sets everything else on fire. This fire seems to be smaller, not one that we, probably would have seen or anything. This is just one that's important to Bonnie Bully, and I'm gonna get into why I think that this specific memory seems important to him in a little bit. Y'all will figure out why this is important. For the carousel, while it's very similar, there are some key differences. The fire starts towards the end of one game. You still have to keep playing as the fire is happening for another minute. And during the second level, the fire is actively happening while you're playing. You're playing in the middle of the fire. Whether or not the fire here was accidental or arson is questionable. See the earlier screenshot. And most importantly, Moon says the important line here, what makes you so special. Keep all this in mind. So, what does make Bonnie Bully so special, Cassie's dad? The very long story short of all this is he witnessed Cassidy burning alive while riding the carousel. Let's think about this for a minute. Cassidy likes carousel rides, according to the other spirits question in the survival logbook. And something about the carousel burning was a major memory for Bonnie Bully. Especially since it seemed like he was there while it was actively burning. Why else would we play a game while the carousel is actively burning? Why would we not play the Fazerblast game where the fire was actively happening? Especially since it was a Fnaf 3 based minigame. There was a fire at Fnaf 3. Why do we just witness the aftermath of the Fazerblast fire? But why do we experience the carousel level where it's actively burning? Moon, once again, says the line here on the carousel levels. And if we think about it in the second game, the second minigame that shows, I think it's the hard mode one, that game shows that while the ride was on fire, it was on and moving. Like there had been someone, or a bunch of people actually, who had been on the carousel when the fire had started. So, let's put the pieces together. There are a few fires that started at Fallfest 83. Some seem to be smaller and more accidental. But one which was much bigger, and potentially not an accident. There appeared to be some sort of makeshift party happening in the barn, potentially a do-over of Cassidy's birthday back during the summer. Notably, there are burning candles in the rafters, despite that being a huge fire hazard. What guy, after coming so close to losing his son just a few months earlier, would put that much of a hazard in the middle of the barn? At one point, a fire seems to start in the barn, potentially from the aforementioned candles in the rafters. A trail of fire starts, leading right to the carousel, hence the question of was this an accident or arson? Cassidy was likely riding or nearby the carousel when the fire started, meaning that he likely got caught in the middle of the fire, maybe not even realizing there was any danger until it was too late. Because keep in mind, he did have a brain injury from just a few months prior. We don't know how he would have been doing after that. Sure, if we go by my midnight motorist explanation, he was at least well enough that he could run around and run to the lake quick enough before William could catch him, and just see footprints after he ran. But, we don't know anything else after that point. He probably didn't realize he was in trouble until it was too late for him to get out of there. William, however, seems surprisingly absent, and not looking after his child. A bit suspicious, if you think about it. Bonnie Bully, after realizing there was a fire, potentially he was playing Fazerblast and the fire started there, like in the game. Maybe he ran off to go get help with it, and then realized the rest of the fires were happening. And then he started running, and he ran by the carousel. He likely went to go get Cassidy off or away from the ride, and then Cassidy is rushed to the hospital. Mike apologizes to his dying brother, most likely for not being there, because, again, if we go by this theory that Mike is the person on the couch in Midnight Motorist, then he's definitely become much kinder to his brother, so maybe he feels horrible for not being there for him. And Charlie, as mentioned in the last video, being the one speaking in this cutscene, promises to put him back together. Cassidy unfortunately doesn't make it this time. The doctors can't save him this time. And while Bonnie Bully would end up repressing these memories, trying to forget the horrible, horrible thing he witnessed that night, the spirits would remember. And one spirit in particular would remember this event very well. So here's another question for y'all. Vengeful on whose behalf? Let me go ahead and get started. Yeah, we're just gonna go into this one right away. No small summary for this section. Jacko Chica. An interesting choice for Ultimate Custom Night, especially since regular Nightmare Chica is there, just not as a main character you can select. She only shows up if Dee Dee selects her by random chance. Why Jacko Chica? Why not have regular Nightmare Chica show up as a main character? Why Why her and, like, Jack O'Bonney and not, like, their regular counterparts? They're still regular Nightmare Freddy, Nightmare Fredbear, Nightmare himself. Why her instead of her regular Nightmare counterpart? And then I thought about some of her lines. Sure, this could be me reading too deep into them, but I want you to, like, think about this with me. Like I said, suspend your disbelief for a minute. Here's her voice lines. The fire within me burns eternal, and now you shall as well. I am a burning reminder of your misdeeds. Greetings from the fire, and from the one you should not have killed. Here's why I think that some of these might be referring to the carousel fire. Well, I didn't add this point to the presentation because I just thought of it a little bit ago. I think that, like, besides the mediocre melodies, there are some lines in Ultimate Custom Night where I don't think it's the character speaking, it's Andrew speaking through them. The Vengeful Spirit, I mean. Like, sure, the mediocre melodies are the most clear example of the Vengeful Spirit speaking through the animatronics, but I do think there are other examples. The mediocre melodies are just, more clear to hear for some reason to William. But the other main reasons I point out, Jago Chica's connections to Fallfest 83 through Fnaf 4. We discussed this earlier. She's Halloween themed, like we discussed Fallfest 83 would have been. And of course, fire. Fire. Her entire thing is fire. Here are my interpretations of the lines. They're pretty simple, but I think thinking about it through the lens of her referring to the carousel fire, the fire that killed Cassidy, are pretty clear. The fire within me burns eternal, and now you shall as well. Angry. Andrew is angry. This is pretty clear. I'm a burning reminder of your misdeeds. This also feels a bit self-explanatory. The Vengeful Spirit is making sure Afton suffers, that he remembers every horrible thing he did, through the animatronics or through other ways. But again, burning fire. This feels like very pointed, like the burning reminder. And then, of course, greetings from the fire and from the one you should not have killed. We'll get to this in a minute, about why this is an important line here. So why would Andrew be vengeful on Cassidy's behalf? Why not just angry about his own murder? He was killed in a very horrible, tragic way through springlocks. Why is he angry on Cassidy's behalf specifically? Well, see my whole thing with Andrew possessing the Fredbear plush. He and Cassidy were friends. He possessed the plushie to keep an eye on him, as I mentioned. And another thing to keep in mind is that if Cassidy had his plush with him still while things were burning, this means Andrew might have potentially witnessed what happened, saw what happened. Cassidy tried to help find his body, even if it risked angering his father, as we mentioned. And of course, as this theory implies, the Fallfest 83 fire, specifically the one that started at the barn and then went to the carousel, was likely at least somewhat purposeful on William's end. Meaning that William effectively murdered his own child. Like, I've seen theories wonder how much William cared for his kids. Like, sometimes that care is different between his kids. Like, sometimes it's agreed that Elizabeth was the one he actually cared for the most. Sometimes it was Elizabeth and Cassidy beside each other, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, as dual process theory pointed out, the guy seemed, at the very least, pretty willing to send Michael to his death in sister location, despite knowing that those animatronics wanted to kill him, and sent his son, who looks pretty close to him, to that bunker with a bunch of robots who wanted him dead, who he knew would likely confuse Michael for him. And so, like, all I'm saying is it's not impossible that, like, maybe the fire was purposeful on William's end, and that it was done to, like, maybe hurt his kid should no one decide to save Cassidy, but it seems like someone did, at least before he completely burned to death. And, of course, Andrew, like I said, was likely either there during Cassidy's final moments, like with Charlie, was there at Fallfest while the fire happened, or he found out that Cassidy died pretty soon after the fact, since with this theory we're going along with that Cassidy, the crying child, also possessed Fredbear along with Andrew. So now we're going to get into why the one you should not have killed line was important. Is there one spirit who's like fully there in UCN? Or are there two? So here's my first part of the theory. The vengeful spirit and the one you should not have killed are not the same person. There's actually like a very subtle difference between the two of them if you stop to think about it. The vengeful spirit seems to play an active role in UCN. He speaks through many animatronics, sometimes in very obvious ways or in ways that you'd have to think about, like with Jacko Chica. He speaks the clearest through the mediocre melodies, and is the one we see at the end of Ultimate Custom Night, with the spring locking. But the one William should not have killed, the one you should not have killed, is described as watching, and generally being around by Mangle. It seems to have created some of the animatronics, specifically the nightmares, because both Nightmare Freddy and Jacko Chica bring him up. And I think it should also be pointed out that Wither Chica, who has the line, "I was the first, I have seen everything," is another character who says the line of, "I have seen him, the one you should not have killed." Mangle is a bit odd, but like, I feel like that's another case of potentially Andrew speaking through an animatronic, but that's not important for now. And of course, as I just mentioned, is referenced by the vengeful spirit, at least through Mangle. And so, here are some lines referencing the one you should not have killed. Nightmare Freddy says, "I am remade, but not by you, by the one you should not have killed." Wither Chica, who, as I mentioned earlier, seems to have a line referencing Susie, if not it potentially being Susie speaking through her, but that's an entirely separate thing. "I have seen him, the one you shouldn't have killed." Is she referencing in life she had seen Cassidy? In death, saw him at, like, somewhere in the afterlife? Who knows what this is really referring to, but she has seen the one you shouldn't have killed. We got Mangle's line, who I mentioned, seems to mention an interesting difference. He's here and always watching, the one you shouldn't have killed. And then, of course, this interesting line. You're probably going to figure out in a minute what I was referencing through this. "Greetings from the fire and from the one you should not have killed." I feel like this is referring not to, like, Jacko Chica's whole thing, but like the carousel fire. "Greetings from the fire and from the one you should not have killed." William's own son is who Andrew is referring to, Cassidy. The one William really should not have killed. Because sure, Andrew is angry about his death at first, baby. But I feel like witnessing a man basically kind of indirectly kill his own son, especially a former friend of Andrew's, boy oh boy, he was not happy about that, and he was going to make sure William knew he wasn't. So, all together now, what's the entire story here? Well, I'll tell you. In the aftermath of the bite, Cassidy was rushed to the hospital. He probably spent a few days in the hospital as all of the nurses and doctors tried to stabilize his condition, but ultimately, he survives. And sure, with some brain damage, which, obviously, and other problems, but he's alive. Using some of my knowledge about, how frontal lobe injuries work, I believe that maybe the nurses tried to give William and maybe Michael a bit of a heads up. Cassidy wasn't going to be the same for a while, maybe never again after this. He was probably going to change a bit, behavior, personality, he was going to be different. And the nurses warned William of this. Your son's not going to act the way he used to be. He's not going to be like the same scared, timid child anymore. Maybe he'll be outgoing, maybe he'll just be entirely quiet, almost apathetic, but either way, Cassidy's going to be different. Michael, most likely out of remorse for what he had done to his brother, decides to keep a better eye on him. William actually at least somewhat trusts him to actually keep an eye on Cassidy this time, because Michael does seem genuinely sorry about what happened. And of course, maybe he starts drinking more again. His son got horribly injured and is different now. His business has likely closed down because, I don't know how you could keep a business open after something like that happening very publicly. And just in general, he's upset. So he starts drinking more, going out drinking and leaving Michael to care for his siblings. And then odd things start happening. Cassidy starts running away from home into the woods towards the lake for seemingly no reason. Michael maybe thinks it's a bit odd, but literally can't understand why his brother's doing that. But William, unfortunately, knows why Cassidy is doing that. He knows why Cassidy's going down to the lake. Because at this point, William has likely realized that ghosts exist, and Cassidy's not just going down there because he wants to go see the lake. He's down there because Andrew's asking him to go. Andrew, who's kind of, fed up of still being, missing and nobody knowing what happened to him, tries to get Cassidy to go down to the lake and maybe try to find him down there, because Andrew at the very least knows that's where his body is. But either William keeps going down to the lake and getting Cassidy back, or Cassidy is unable to really get too far into the lake without the, risk of drowning and all that. And so I'd like to think it's a case where either William will occasionally go down there to go get Cassidy if he thinks Cassidy seems to be determined enough, or he just simply waits for Cassidy to eventually come back home. But William's getting more and more angry because he knows why Cassidy's going down to the lake so often. And of course, as the months go by, William decides that he needs to do something before Cassidy, basically gets him caught. Because at some point, people are going to start asking, why is your son going down to the lake so often? What's his obsession with going down there? Because maybe Michael might be mentioning to people, hey, my brother just keeps randomly going down to the lake near our house for some reason. And so, during Fallfest, William makes a decision. A horrible one. He disguises it as it being a sort of do-over party for what happened back in summer with Cassidy getting injured. And he's like, oh, I'll just do a much safer version of the party this time. We're gonna have it in this barn over here. It's Fallfest, like, people are already gonna have a good time there, like, why not just re-celebrate his son's birthday? And people don't question it. It's Mr. Afton, the guy who owns Freddy's and all that. Like, why would they suspect he's doing something bad here? So, William sets up a little party, puts some candles in the rafters. He probably claims it's just to, get some lights in there or something, even though some people are eyeing his odd lighting choice a bit skeptically, but, who knows, everything's probably gonna be fine. Michael was probably asked to watch his brother again, but who knows, maybe they got separated. Cassidy just wanted to ride the carousel and Mike left for a few minutes while he was doing that. Or maybe Mike was like, I'm sure he can take care of himself. He doesn't seem to be doing too horribly. Maybe he can handle himself. And maybe goes off to talk with some friends, play some games. But just in general, all you need to know for this is Mike left Cassidy alone, which was the wrong thing to do. Off somewhere else, at Fazerblast, his old friend Bonnie Bully is over there just playing games. Maybe he likely also feels pretty bad about what happened to Cassidy. About what he had done to the poor kid. And while all of this is going on and while no one suspects the thing, maybe William causes some candles to fall. Maybe he makes a mistake while lighting the candles for his son's birthday party. It doesn't really matter. All anyone remembers is that a fire suddenly started in the barn, and people started running. No one really noticed the odd trail leading towards the carousel where his son was, at. And again, maybe Cassidy just couldn't get off the ride in time. He didn't even know there was any danger or anything just yet. But Andrew was unfortunately there, still keeping an eye on his best friend, as he'd always done. And before anyone knew it, the carousel was just engulfed in flames. Maybe no one noticed Cassidy was still there. Maybe people didn't have time to realize he was still there. Everyone starts running. Bunny Boy sort of sees a smaller fire accidentally start at Fazerblast, and originally ran off to go get help, before he realized that the entirety of Fallfest seemed to be on fire now. Instead, he chooses to run, and he ends up running by the carousel, where he notices something that, excuse the pun, was literally burned into his memory. He sees Cassidy still on the moving carousel, but the kid is burning. He maybe runs up there to go get Cassidy off the carousel and go get help. And afterwards, Cassidy is rushed to the hospital. Unfortunately, this time Cassidy won't survive. The doctors know there's not much they can do, and so they tell the family to pay their final respects. Michael, heartbroken, apologizes to his brother for not being there. Unsure if his brother can even hear him, unbeknownst to him, he can. And Charlie, realizing what's happened, likely maybe to Andrew getting her attention, goes over there and promises to put her old friend back together again. Maybe because Cassie is young enough that she doesn't really know how to explain the whole you're gonna possess an animatronic process that she has going on. And in the end, Cassidy will unfortunately die, but go on to possess Fredbear with Andrew. Andrew, however, is livid. He didn't think Afton would go that far. Maybe to some extent, maybe he knew William was not the greatest person, but the guy seemed to, love his kids at least. What kind of father would do that to their own kid? And so, that's when Andrew's goals maybe shift from, like everyone else, just wanting Afton dead and no longer being a problem, to wanting him to suffer. Fast forward to Ultimate Custom Night, maybe Andrew drags Cassidy into it. Because hey, don't you want to see your dad suffer for what he did to you back in 1983? Maybe Cassidy, young enough, just goes, sure, why not? And then Ultimate Custom Night goes from there. There's two spirits there, but maybe William doesn't realize it. Maybe he just thinks it's one there, that the vengeful spirit and the one you should not have killed were the same person. But they aren't. His son's also there. And Charlie and maybe sometimes the other kids show up from time to time, whether they're also stuck there like everyone else is, or it's just like a them coming to check in on everyone else sort of thing. They also show up. But years later, as he's working for a technician, funnily enough, for Fazbear Entertainment once again, he starts to remember. And he starts to remember specifically what happened in Fallfest 83. That's what makes him so special. He was the one who at least tried to save Cassidy. And now maybe some spirit out there is trying to help him remember what happened. Anyway, that's what I got. There's my conspiracy theory. Thanks for hearing me out, and like I said, this is very likely not correct. My brain just started connecting dots, and then didn't stop connecting them. So in general, there's just my conspiracy theory, and my little fanfiction type explanation for the plot here. But yeah, to summarize, long story short, Cassidy is the midnight motorist runaway. He was leaving to go find Andrew, the Fredbear MCI kid's body in the lake near his house. William started realizing that he could very likely get caught if he didn't do something, and thus decided to burn his kid to death. However, he didn't fully succeed because the Bonnie Bully, Cassie's dad, found Cassidy and tried to save him at least. And then Andrew got very understandably mad about what happened. And of course, my little mini theory that there are actually two main spirits in Ultimate Custom Night. So thanks for listening. And again, before anyone mentions in the comments how this is very likely not canon, I'm aware, trust me, I'm just as aware as you are that this is likely not at all how things went. You don't need to remind me. This is just something that I did kind of for fun, where my brain connected some dots that were probably never meant to be connected. But who knows, maybe y'all will like this one. There was a reason why this theory was so much longer. It's mostly due to me rambling about my reasons for how my brain connected something. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this and you at least found it an interesting conspiracy theory. But I hope y'all enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and in just a little bit, y'all are gonna see another video of mine, me playing Minecraft again for the first time on this channel in ages. But anyway, goodbye! Hope you enjoyed, and see you guys in a little bit.